I think that there's really two types of people in the world. There's list takers, and then there's everyone else who just makes it up as they go along. I'm married to a list taker. She thinks that somehow, I don't know, brings order to life, or it makes the world a better place. When we go on a holiday, she's got literally A4 sides of tick lists of everything that we have to do before we go away. And then she sends it to me as well, and she's like, I want you to start ticking stuff off. I'm like, that's just not how I flow. That's not how my life works. I'm not a tick list kind of person. I just want to work it out as I go. You know, I'll make it up. I'm much more kind of like, what do we feel like in the moment? And she's like, that's great, but we've got children. And they do sometimes need to have like toothbrushes and pajamas packed for them when we're on holiday. Anybody else like Emma? Who is a list maker? Yeah, like a bunch of us. And who's more like me? You're just like, do you know, I'll make it up as I go along. Yeah, exactly. That's where life is. I don't think you can have a day off and lists at the same time. It doesn't work. And so I've been away all week at the Hillsong conference in London, and it has been a phenomenal week. And I think I could have maybe done with a little bit of Emma's list-taking abilities, because I was only going away for a few days, but there's certain things which I knew that I needed. And I kind of paid attention, so I made sure I had my toothbrush. I forgot the charger, but I made sure I had the toothbrush. So I had an electric toothbrush, using it manually, which doesn't work quite as well if you've ever tried that. I made sure that I had my wallet, and I made sure that I had my train tickets. I made sure that I had enough clothes, and I headed down on the train all the way down to the O2 Arena in London. And it was so hot, so sweaty, so sticky. But I walked and got there from the station, and I arrived at the O2 Arena, and there's these big long queues. I got to the front of the queue after a lot of waiting, and they said, "Can I have your ticket, please?" And that was the moment that I realized that I didn't actually have a ticket, that I'd completely forgotten the most important thing. I thought about everything else around it, everything that I needed. I made sure I had all the food and the drinks and everything else, but I forgot the very thing that was essential for me to get to the place that I wanted to get to. And I think that this is a little bit like us sometimes, that we do all of these amazing things and we forget the thing that is the most important. And when I read the Bible, it starts right at the beginning with this promise made to Abraham, and it says, I'm going to bless you to be a blessing for the nations. And I could do a sermon about blessing and we would all get really excited. I could do a sermon about how God wants to provide for you. And I think we'd love those sort of things, don't we? We all want to know how we can get more of Jesus, how we can be filled more, how we can be blessed, how he can fix all of our problems, how he can make our lives better. But we forget that the point of the blessing was so that Abraham would be a blessing for the nations, that we're blessed to be a blessing. And I think that so often I miss the point. And I think it's because it's complicated, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like I have a tension inside of me where, like, my story is that my life was falling apart and everything was going wrong, and I was hitting rock bottom, and I met Jesus, and then everything changed. And Paul in the Bible describes it as being like going from death to life, and that was absolutely my experience. And now it's like I look at what I have in my life, and everything is because of Jesus. He has changed everything for me. And all I really want is to help other people meet Jesus too, because he's the best. And he's phenomenal, and he's incredible. And I'll go to the hairdressers, and they'll ask me what I do, and I'll say, I lead a church. And they'll say, why do you do that? Why do you believe in Jesus? And then straight away, it's like my mouth gets thick, and I can't move my lips, and I get awkward, and it's difficult. Does anybody else find that difficult? Like it's not easy for me to share my faith, and I'm supposed to lead the church, and then I feel guilty for it as well. I'm supposed to be the first in line to be telling everyone, and yet so often it's like I would rather just disappear, and like I love like people like Lauren job is like just phenomenal, but like what do you do if you're not Lauren? You know, what do you do if you can't just walk up to anybody and just start a conversation like that? If you don't find it easy, what do you do if you're an introvert? What if you don't have the right words? How do we do this? And this is the tension that I live in. Like, I don't want anything really more than I want to share Jesus, and yet I don't think I find anything harder either. And I think that it's not because it doesn't matter to me, it's because it matters so much. It's like if I share and then they reject me, or if I share and they judge me, they don't get it, like that hurts. And there's something vulnerable. And yet what I've also found is when I have shared my faith, when I have told people about Jesus, those moments are like the most exciting. There's something addictive in the best possible way about when you start sharing your faith, when you start sharing Jesus with people and you start seeing their lives transformed. It's amazing. One of my favorite moments is in church when at the end of the service, I said, who wants to become a Christian? And this girl put her hand up. And then I saw the girl next to her just start crying. And she threw her arms around her and she started dancing. And I was like, this meant more to your friend than it seemed to for you. But it was like she'd been praying for her for years and she'd been trying to help her and she'd been worried for her and she'd encouraged her. And then to see her life transform, it meant everything. And I think it's hard because not all of us feel like we can just stand in front of people and speak. Like that's not always the easiest thing. And I think that we minimize blessing people to just speaking, to just sharing, and there's so much more to it. And over this summer period, we want to help you to be a blessing in the fullest sense of the word. We want you to bless people's lives in so many different ways, and it's why we've released this. Has anybody got this magazine? Did you get one on the way in? Hopefully everyone has this. And the heartbeat of this is really, I just want to give you some really simple, practical ideas, practical ways that you can be a blessing. And there's so many different things. And I think that one of the things that I would most recommend you to do is to find the thing that you love the most, whatever that is. If you love surfing, go surfing. If you love football, play football. There's a guy who has been at Soulcity this year called Sam. He's going to be coming back in September and volunteering and doing youth work with us for the next year. He loves D&D. He loves like these board games. And it's like, so he uses that. He does that for Jesus. And I think you can take whatever it is that you love and then you can just invite other people in. And you can use it as a way to bless people. But there's loads of different ideas, loads of things that you can do in here. And this is the heartbeat of the series that we're exploring over the next 4 or 5 weeks, which is how do we bless people? And last week, Emma just shared what I thought was the most profound talk. I thought it was absolutely impacting. If you missed it, I'd love to encourage you to catch up. Yeah. And it was about beginning with prayer, that we need to begin everything with prayer. I was thinking this week, what's the difference between a vocation and a job? I think the difference is prayer. I think that it doesn't matter what you do, but when you start praying, it transforms your work. It transforms what you do. And you can be a dentist, but when you start praying before you go to work, you start seeing God move in a different way whilst you're doing fillings or whatever it is that you're doing. The prayer really, really matters. And today we're going to move to the second one, which is L. And it'll probably be on the screen in a moment behind me. And L is going to stand for listen. And I'll be honest with you, when I started the week and I looked and I saw that, and I wrote this sermon series out, so I gave myself this talk, but when I saw that I'd accidentally given myself the listen talk, I was like, oh dear, Ben. I did an application about 5 years ago to do a church planting residency, and the idea of this was that I would go to Africa for 6 months, train in church planting in Africa, and then I would go to Chicago for 6 months, train in church planting in Chicago. And they sent me all these questions, and one of the questions was, has anybody ever told you that you were a good listener? And I sat there, and with shame, I ticked the no, never. But I am naturally, this is why I do what I do, because I like the speaking bit. I like communicating. I'm a bad listener. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to communicate this? And the more that I've thought about this week, the more I've realized how vital and how important listening is in mission, listening is in evangelism, listening is in being a blessing. And I think that even just me exploring this week, some weeks you're preaching from a place of strength, other times, like, you're preaching from humility and weakness. This is me this week. So I'd love it if you could just find a Bible. And I want to start with Jesus because I think he has a lot of good stuff to say. So if you could find the book of Luke, if you've got the Soulcity app, it is right in there as well. That's literally what I'm going to be following today as well. Just jump onto the app and you can go to sermons and then notes. We're going to be looking at Luke chapter 18 and we're starting with verses 35 through to 40. As Jesus and his followers arrived at Jericho, there was a blind beggar sitting at the roadside, and when he heard the crowd approaching, he asked, "What's all this commotion about?" "It's Jesus," they said. "Jesus the Nazarene is passing by." The blind beggar shouted, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity and show me mercy." Those who were in front of the crowd scolded him and warned him to be quiet. But the blind beggar screamed out even louder, "Jesus, Son of David, show me mercy." And suddenly Jesus stopped. He told those nearby, "Bring the man over to me." When they brought him before Jesus, he asked the man, and this is the important bit, "What is it you want me to do for you?" "Lord," he said, "please, I want to see again." Jesus said, "Now you will see. Receive your sight this moment, for your faith in me has given you new sight and new life." Instantly he could see again. His eyes popped open and he saw Jesus. He shouted loud praises to God and he followed Jesus. And when the crowd saw what happened, they too erupted with shouts of praise to God. Wow. I want you to picture this scene. I think of it when I read this as being a little bit like a gig. I mean, that's the biggest crowds that I've ever been in. What's the biggest gig or the biggest crowd you've ever found yourself in? About 10 years ago, I saw Green Day play at the Milton Keynes Bowl. It was packed. You couldn't move. When the crowd jumped, it didn't matter whether you wanted to jump or not. The friction carried you up and down. It was totally insane. It was epic. And we were like the second row from the front. I sometimes watch that video again just to see if I can catch myself, but there was just too many people. There's no way that I could have seen myself in a crowd that big. And this is how I imagine this. It's like the sea of people. There's this huge crowd and there's a celebration in the city at this time, and people are calling out, people are excited, people are shouting, and this man calls out to Jesus. And I imagine myself at this Green Day gig, if I'd have turned around to my friends I was with and said, "Do you know what? I'm going to get their attention. I'm going to call out to what's the singer's name? Billy Joel? Is it Billy Joel? Billy Joe Armstrong. Hey, Billy Joe!" Like, people would be like, "You're an idiot. He's not going to stop his gig to listen to you. It doesn't matter what I wanted to say to him." People would be like, "You're never going to catch his attention." But then imagine, halfway through American Idiot, he stops playing. "You, what is it that you want from me?" And I turned around and I was like, "Could you play Jesus of Suburbia?" Like, like that would never happen because there's too many people. And yet in this crowd, Jesus hears this guy's voice. I think it's a bit like a mum in a toddler group and you hear your baby cry. It doesn't matter how many other children are there. It's like you just have this laser kind of hearing ability. "Hey, you, what do you need? What do you want?" And maybe you think in this story, well, it's obvious he's a blind man, he wants his sight. But Jesus doesn't presume that. He doesn't presume that just because the guy was blind that he would want sight. I think that this is phenomenal. Jesus, who made heaven, who made earth, Jesus who could do everything and anything, stops to take the time to ask this blind man, what is it that you want me to do for you? I think so often we think that the most powerful thing that God can do is speak. You know, God, give us a word. God, speak to me. God, tell me something. Whereas I actually think that we miss the power that God just simply listens.
Oh, that's good.
You know, it doesn't matter what it is that is on your heart. You could be frustrated because you're single and you want to find a partner. You could be annoyed by this thing at work. You could have a problem with your knee that never goes away, and it's like, well, it's not cancer, it's not big, it doesn't seem to be really important, it doesn't even matter. Jesus wants to know what matters to you. He wants to know what's upsetting you. He wants to know what's hurting you. He doesn't come and just presume that you want to be saved, you want to be healed, you want to be helped in the way that he would want to help you. He starts by asking you, what can I do for you? This is phenomenal. Creator of heaven, today, is here with us. And he's asking you, what do you want of me? What's standing in the way of your life? And maybe like me, you're here and you're like, you know, I want to do these amazing things. I want to be a blessing. I want to be more like Lauren. I want to have courage. I want to be boldness. Or maybe it's something completely different that's frustrating you. And I believe that Jesus is here saying, what do you want from me? And he's waiting and he's listening. And what I found is that the more that I draw close to Jesus, the more I become like him. That the more that I get to know him, the more I spend time, the more that I start to become irrationally compassionate. I start to have empathy. I start to care about people. And then in the same way, I start to listen more. I start to hear people. I want to explain how important this is, and I don't feel like I can. I don't feel like I have the vocabulary to explain how important listening is. So I want you to experience it. So what I would like to do is to ask everybody to get into twos. Find somebody next to you right now, a person A and a person B. If you're in a three, then look around for another three. Move around if you need to, but I want you to find a partner, and we're going to do an exercise to try and just explain how much this matters. So go on. Has everyone got a two? If anybody doesn't have a partner, put your hand up. And we will find somebody to move towards you. Partner A and partner B. Sammy, would you come and be my friend here?
I will certainly come and join you, Benjamin.
And what partner A, person A, is going to be doing, I want you to think of something that you're passionate about. What is it that matters to you? It can be anything. It doesn't even have to be true. Just something that you think you can talk about for 30 seconds. And then person B is going to be the listener. And what I want person B, so we got 2 threes there. Pete, you could, Autumn's moved to Pete. That didn't work. Okay, we'll let you guys work it out a little bit. Has anybody else not got a partner because there's a 3? No, okay. All right, you'll have to work that out. Is that all right? What I would like person B to be is the listener, and your job is to do all of the listening habits that you hate. So as they're talking to you, I don't know what it would be. Maybe you won't make eye contact, check your phone, interrupt them, change the subject, whatever it is, the things that you hate most when someone is talking to you, is your job to do that for 30 seconds. And we'll use the microphones just so that we can do it for the video, but you don't have to listen to us. Feel free to have that conversation. Person A, Sammy, person A, tell me something that you are passionate about.
Have you seen that the new Lion King album has come out? So there's loads of like new songs on it.
That's got
really,
Beyonce.
really good.
Have
Yeah,
you
it's got
listened to
Beyonce.
Green Day? I was just saying earlier about Green Day, and they are like this amazing band.
Yeah, Green Day's
And
cool.
they did a song called Jesus of Suburbia. I mentioned that earlier too.
Yeah.
Really, really good. And yeah, that's my favourite.
So my favourite song on it actually is what's it called now? I think it's it's Brown Skin Girl. It's really cool, really empowering. really great for young brown-skinned girls to hear that they are beautiful and all that stuff. So it's really good. It's really, really good. I'm excited to see the film. I've not seen it yet, so that'll be really good for me to watch it. Have you watched the film, Lion King?
Oh, I thought we were talking about that. Sorry. No, yeah, the cartoon.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'd like us to swap. If you could swap with the other person and let them have a go sharing to you something that they are passionate about. So bees are now sharing about what they're passionate about. So I'll go first. There's this band called Green Day, and they got a singer called Billy Joe Armstrong. And honestly, like when I was a kid, it
Oh my
changed
gosh,
my
look at that
life.
picture.
yeah.
It's silhouette.
It's but they play this song called Jesus of Suburbia, and it's not actually even about Jesus. It's a funny title because they're not even Christians, yet sometimes their lyrics
I've always
are
wondered,
really
you know, like suburbia.
profound.
Like, is that like a UK? Can you say like you live in a suburbia if you're in the UK, or is it like an
Well,
American?
they're not an
thing?
English band.
Is it?
They're,
Oh, okay,
they're,
fair.
they're an
It's
American,
an American band.
Yeah. But the point is,
I love
the point
American
is,
Boy by Estelle. That's a really cool song. America.
Yeah, I don't know. Who she is.
America. It's
I
cool.
do really, but I just wish I didn't. Okay, let's draw you back in. Let's draw your focus. Let's what did that feel like when when you were trying to share something that mattered? What did that feel like to you? What was your experience? How did you feel? Ignored, annoyed, frustrated. It's awkward. You just want to stop, give up, like it doesn't even matter anymore. It makes you feel bad about yourself, like you don't matter, like what you're passionate about isn't important. What was? Oh, Judith now feels bad about herself for making Paul feel bad about himself. Anything else? Yeah, I think that it shows a lack of empathy, it shows a lack of love, and it shows a lack of value. And I also think that this is the posture that most of us walk through life in. That even when we do listen, we're not really listening for them, we're listening for ourselves. We're listening for what I can get out of it, we're listening for myself. And it's a little bit of a symptom of the times. I think that we're conditioned for this because we're just surrounded by so many things trying to get our attention all the time. Things are shouting, they're calling for us, like listen to me, watch me, and everything is entertaining. When we even do listen, we don't have the focus, we don't have the time. And if it's not interesting, if it's slightly something we're not fascinated by, we just turn away, we just lose interest. We're constantly looking over their shoulder for a better conversation, a better thing. I met somebody just this week at the Hillsong conference, and I was having a chat with them, and I went to say hi, and to introduce myself, and the whole conversation, they looked past me as if they were looking for somebody more important, somebody more interesting, somebody more worth their time than me. I listened to a story this week about a girl, and her story was tragic. She was sharing it, and she was abused when she was younger, and she was hurting, and she decided that she was going to take her life and just end it all. And she went to do it, and for some reason or another, at the last minute, she decided she would call the Samaritans. And the lady answered the phone and asked her a question, and she just shared how she was feeling. And the lady listened, and she encouraged her, and she pulled information out of her, and she took the time. And afterwards, this lady is now in her 40s. This was when she was a child. She's now in her 40s, and she works for Samaritans. And she said, the act of listening literally saved my life. I don't think we understand how powerful listening is. And I spend so much time trying to train myself to be a better communicator, to be a better speaker, to try and articulate the words in a way that people will hear. And yet I spend no time practicing listening, practicing hearing. And hearing and listening is different. You can be in a crowd, you can hear everything, and you can listen to nothing, because listening requires focus, it requires attention, it requires humility. It requires you to care more about them than whatever it is that's going on in you. And sometimes we think that the opposite of listening is speaking, but the opposite of listening isn't speaking. The opposite of listening is when you're thinking about the thing that you're going to say next all the time, throughout the whole conversation. How many times does someone speak to you and then it's just like you're not listening at all? I mean, if I got £1 for every time my wife said it to me, I would be a rich man right now. I'd be doing all right. I was at a meeting even just this week. I was at a table full of church leaders, and there was another table who was speaking. And then at the end of the time they were speaking, they turned to us and they said, well, can you pray for what they were speaking about? And it was like, uh-oh. And I'm kicking the pastor next to me. I'm kicking him under the table. You pray, you pray. I wasn't listening, and he's kicking me back. As none of us were listening. And you will miss the opportunities that God has placed around your life if your ears are not open to them. I believe that God has stuff for you that he wants you to do. That he has a mission, he has a purpose for you. And one of the biggest reasons that you will not fulfill it isn't your ability to speak. It's not even your confidence. It's your ability to hear and listen. It's vital for us. There was a group of missionaries who went to India. And they arrived in this community and they said, how do you want us to serve you? How do you want us to bless you? Do you want us to build a school? Do you want us to bring food? Do you want a church? What is it that you want? This is the same question Jesus was asking. How can we help you? And they said, we want a post box. A post box. They were like, we would never have thought of a post box. Why would you want a post box? And they said, well, in India, where we live, we don't have a post box. And if you don't have a post box, you don't have a postcode. And if you don't have a postcode, then you're not a real community. You literally do not exist. So we get no medical care. We get no help. We get no kind of benefits. We get no, we can't vote. We can't do anything. We are literally invisible in our country because we don't have a post box. And so the missionaries came and they built this post box because they listened to what the people wanted. How often do we just go in and we're like, you need this, you need that, you need help. Let me tell you this thing that I know. Jesus loves you. He's amazing. Let me explain everything that is from my point of view. And we never start by asking them, hey, tell me about your life. Tell me about what you feel like. What's your existence like? And then if you begin with prayer and you start to learn to listen, I found that I don't even need to speak so much of the time. That just the act of listening allows somehow God to do something incredible. I just want to give you three little tips, 3 little helpers to help you to develop as a listener, as somebody who can hear. And the first one that I want to encourage you with is to cultivate curiosity. Be someone who cultivates curiosity. The people who I most love spending time with are the people who ask the best questions. They don't just ask one question, hey Ben, how are you? And then I say, oh yeah, I'm fine, I've been to Hillsong conference. They then follow it up. What was it like? What was the best sermon? What was it that really stirred your passion up at Hillsong? What's been difficult for you? What are you struggling with? What do you think we could do next? And they'll ask really, really good questions because they're curious about me. And I want to encourage you not to just spend the whole conversation thinking about that clever, interesting thing that you want to say that you look good, but to cultivate curiosity.
Good, Mum.
Draw things out of other people, and you will find that there is gold inside people. There is wisdom inside people that will change your life because you've learned to listen. The second thing I'd love for you to learn to do is to expect God to move. If you've begun with prayer, I believe that God places people around you intentionally. What if you went into every single conversation expecting there to be a God moment? And so rather than you trying to dictate the conversation, rather than you trying to pull it into the direction you want it to go, you can just listen for what God has already been doing. There's this amazing story in Acts, I think it's like Acts 8, somewhere around there, about Philip. And God takes him to the desert And he is there with this caravan. And what does he do? He just listens. And he hears this eunuch, and the eunuch is reading the scriptures. And he's literally sitting there saying, I wish somebody could come and explain this all to me. Wouldn't you love to have an opportunity like that? Somebody just sitting there saying, I can see all of this information. I just wish someone would explain it. I believe that God places those people around you every single day. People who are broken and they're looking for help. People who are frustrated. People who want a solution and they are asking the question. And if you can learn to listen, then you can learn to become that person who gets to be the blessing in that situation. But it starts with listening. And the last thing I want to encourage you to do is to listen beyond the words. How often do you come to church and you meet people and you can have a conversation with them the whole time and their lives look epic and excellent, and then 2 weeks later you find that they've been carrying these heavy things? And you never even noticed because you were listening just to what they were saying and not to their actions, not to their body language, not to the hurt that you could see in their eyes. That you knew probably that they were just giving you a nice story, but you didn't really care enough to dig deeper, to ask a more profound question. And because you just didn't really want to have to deal with it on that day, you kept it surface level. But if you can learn to see beyond what people say, to the heartbeat, to the why behind the words, then you'll have the opportunity to really speak into people's lives. And you need to hold that carefully. Because if you listen to people and they open themselves up to you, that's vulnerable. You know, Jesus didn't say, hey, how can I help you? And the guy says, hey, I'm blind. Like, that's really frustrating me at the moment. Can you give me sight? And Jesus, he didn't turn around and go, do you know what? That's not important. You need to sort out your gambling problem. That's what I'm interested in. You need to sort out the way you speak to people. You know, he didn't just condemn him. So often people are vulnerable with us, and we encourage them, we entice them, and then we listen, and then we just attack them. And we judge them. And Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus listens openly. He listens and he hears, and he says, you know, that sounds like that's really bad. And he empathizes with them. But then he doesn't stop with listening. He then steps in and he moves. I'd like to ask the band to come up. And I'd like to ask everybody to stand with me. When I look back and I think about the people who have been in my life, who've been around me, and I look back at my posture, the way that I walk through life, and I make it all about my desires, all about my will and my way and the things that I want to do and what I want to get out of stuff. And I think about all the people that have been hurting and broken around me, and if I'm honest, I couldn't have cared less most of the time. And that hurts me. It hurts me that is in me. And I don't think I'm the only person like that. I think that lots of us are like this. That we know that there's something more that we could be doing. And yet it's like we just miss it. And we don't do anything about it. And this listening thing is so simple. You don't need a degree in listening to listen to somebody. You just need to care. Do you know, I don't believe you can love somebody and not listen. I don't believe you can empathize with somebody and not listen. Jesus doesn't tell us much that we have to do, but he tells us that we do need to love. And we do need to listen. And I stand here today, as I said earlier, as somebody who knows they're not good enough at this. I look at myself and I say, Ben, I need to be better. And I'm not going to judge myself for it, but I am going to do something about it. I'm going to say, God, I need your help. I need you to open my ears. I need you to change something in my heart, because I refuse to go through life just looking for what's in it for me and never looking for what's in it for other people. And so today I'm going to stand here and I'm going to say, this is going to be a new day for me. This is going to be a day when I learn to listen better, when I start to cultivate curiosity in other people, when I start to expect these conversations to turn into divine God moments, that I expect God to have moved before I even arrived. I don't need to do it all, but if I listen, that I think that there's going to be moments when He will use me. Maybe I'm not the best person at communicating all the time, but I can be the best listener. And so I'm going to listen deeper in people's lives. If you want to say, like me, I want to draw a line in the sand. I want to be a powerful listener. God, I need you to do something in me. I'd love it if you just raise your hand with me and just say, from today, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to change my focus. You know, God, we are here and we are sorry. We're sorry that our ears have been closed. We're sorry that we spend all of our time thinking about ourselves, thinking about what we want to say. And we get frustrated that people don't listen to us, but we're not listening to anybody else either. Lord, I pray that you make the deaf hear in this church in your name. That we will hear the sounds around us. Lord, use us to bring blessings, to bring life, to bring love, to bring healing, to bring hope. Show us the power of healing in your name.